It's been quite a while since Rach and I have seen each other on Zoom because she's been traveling. She's been to the United States of America. She may even have been to a particular bookshop that I would like her to talk about. Rach, take us through it.
I did. You know what it's like when you've been on holiday and I know you have, you just sort of, it feels a blur. Like I feel like I've never left now, that was just a dream. So I don't feel like it was that long ago since we actually were talking.
You changed
But yeah,
hemispheres though.
what's that?
You changed hemispheres though.
I know, it's bizarre. I just think life's so crazy busy that yeah, just straight back into it all. And there's my dog barking out there somewhere, so hopefully if you can hear that, apologies. So yeah, I went on a road trip from Washington DC to New Orleans, and we did a bit of a detour before. Much to my husband's chagrin a little bit, but he also kind of liked the idea of it, I think. We went to Nora Roberts' bookshop, which is about an hour and a half north of Washington, D.C., in a little town called Boonesborough. So I do love Nora's books. I have not read all 200 plus of them, but I have read her series In Boonesborough. It's called In as in I-N-N. And I knew that book was based, or that series of books was based on an old inn that her and her husband bought in the town where she lives and renovated. And each of the rooms are a different like fictional couple. We were in the Jane and Rochester room. There's even York, which is obviously her couples, and I think there's the Pride and Prejudice one. Anyway, there's lots and lots of rooms, and they're amazing. So that was really interesting seeing that in, because I'd read the book about the renovation of it, and there's supposedly a ghost there. I did not see a ghost, but across the road from In Boonesborough, which I was even more excited about going to, is Nora Roberts' bookshop. I reckon if you're an author, that's the best. Don't you reckon? I think all authors should aim to have a bookshop eventually. Like I think that's the height of your success.
Well, the whole there was a great New Yorker article about Nora a few years ago, and it talks
Okay.
about her book in the bookshop and essentially, I think, buying half the town. She has the
Yeah, I
gym.
think her
She has
son
that.
owns the pizza place maybe as well, which we went for dinner, which was amazing. I had pasta, but yeah.
So I do recommend that if you can, it may well be behind a paywall for the New Yorker, but it
Yeah.
is a really interesting article, partly because there's a lot in it about her work process. But yeah, look,
Oh
it's all
yeah.
aimed to have that bookshop, Rach.
What's that? Sorry?
It's all aimed to have that bookshop.
Yeah, so she's got a bookshop, and one whole room, I think there's about 3 rooms and sort of a little, it's like kind of a few old shops sort of put together. And one of the rooms is completely her books. So you have to have written a certain amount of books to, actually I think it's almost 2 rooms, because she's got one room that's got her Nora Roberts books, and then another room that's got her JD Robb books. And then she does lots of signings and things. So, I think that would be the ultimate author dream, to go and do a book signing at Nora Roberts. I mean, you must have made it if she invites you there to come and do a book signing.
Oh, I thought you meant she just did personally a lot of signings, and I was thinking that's like a Vegas residency, but for authors. You set
Yeah,
yourself up in your own bookshop and just make everyone come to you.
exactly. Yeah, that's true. She does do some. I was listening to a lady who was obviously a fangirl while I was trying to do videos, but did a terrible job and photos and stuff. And the lady was asking the woman behind the counter, who obviously has worked with Nora for a long time. Same in the lady in the inn used to be Nora's housekeeper, and there was so she must be okay person to work with, because they all seemed, but this lady was saying, oh, does Nora come in, much to the shop kind of thing? And they said, oh, she does signing every few months, but next month there was a girls' night in with a few different authors coming, and she'd be at that. I thought, it's quite a small store though, so I don't know how they fit all the people in maybe they like spill out onto the street.
And then they go and buy pizza while they're waiting. I think that's a good set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it was lovely. It was a nice experience. Yeah.
And now I did see some footage slash photos on socials of you leaving copies of your books in certain
Oh
spots.
yeah, at little libraries. I think that was my husband's idea. Maybe I said like I would take 1 or 2 and drop, the little libraries across Australia, America. And then my husband was like, no, he goes big at everything. So he said, let's take as many as we can fit. So basically half of his suitcase was full of books. So I took I took 32 books. We measured it all out. And then there's a little library app. I don't know if it covers the Australian little libraries, but it's called, I think, Little Free Library, and it's an app, and I made him do all the work. So he had to download the app. And then basically you just drive, and you can just say which, you click a button and it tells you which little library it's, how many are in the area, and what their story is. So yeah, we went off the beaten track a little bit, which was good because he got to see kind of things he probably wouldn't in the hunt for the little library. So we didn't, sadly, I have not heard from anyone who's found one yet, because I did put a note in each one saying, this book's come all the way from Australia. If you find one, please contact me. So sadly, no one yet.
Well, maybe they're just too shy.
Or maybe they haven't. I mean, some of them are really off the beaten track, and I'm thinking, is anyone ever going to find this? And one was so damaged that I said to my husband, I'm not leaving it here. I'm not, this is too sad.
To return,
not leaving my book baby here. Yeah.
No,
so while I've been gallivanting, what have you been up to?
Look, I too seem to have had things pass in a blur, but not for the same reasons. I think just a lot of work-related things, and country music-related things, and yoga-related things, the usual stuff.
Related things.
So I've just today taken delivery of the proofread. The proofread pages of Art Hour at the Duchess Hotel, which is coming out in August. And so the system with my publishers is that they have a proofreader look at it before the author sees it.
Yep, that's what we used to do.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. The way I've always been used to as an editor, when I was working just as an editor, it was that the proofread went to the author at the same time as the proofreader.
Interesting. Some houses must do that and some don't.
Yeah. So anyway, that's okay, because it's,
your pages are already proofread, and you're just sort of checking and see if you can get any of your own, like if they've missed anything.
I guess also if there are any last tweaks I'd like to make, but if there are any authors out there who are heading into an editorial process for the first time, please do not make significant changes at the proofread page. No one is keen on that. And it's not because, you shouldn't change things just for the sake of it. It's because large movements of text, once the book is typeset, can cause a real problem.
And you can miss that when other things can disappear by accident. And
well, the later new material is introduced, the more likelihood there is of mistakes, just because there's fewer opportunities to check everything at that stage. And the proofreader, in my case, I think often will happen, there are queries that they may have that the copy editor didn't raise because they didn't notice them or didn't think they were questions, but the proofreader will have queries, and I'm always happy to see those because they're the last sense checker, really. And then if I have the wherewithal, I'll read the whole thing start to finish.
I was about to say, so I was like, how do you feel about that final read through? Like, I try and do it? I think it's been hit and miss. Sometimes I make my mum do it.
Right.
Because she's actually really good at picking mistakes up, and I never have been. But then I'll just check, I'll whatever I'm given. If I've given a printout, I'll get her to read it. If not, I'll get one for her. Because she does pick up way more things than I do usually. So yeah, because I think by that stage I'm usually so over it. So that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how do you feel about your book now you've been through all these different stages, honestly?
Well, I think there is a sense of just knowing that I will not be able to pick things up now. So I'll pick up maybe things on the line. So there might be the odd word I want to change or something that jars, but hopefully I picked all of that up during the copy edit. But I just won't be able to see that story clearly. But having said that, whenever I finish reading the pages, I do get a little teary because I just think this is the time I'm going to spend with these characters. And
unless you're on a sequel.
Unless you're on a sequel, which is very unlikely. But they're about to go out into the world, and then I won't see them again. Yeah, and then they'll belong to other people, and I always think, I've done the best I can for them.
Yeah, so, that's true.
At the moment,
I feel like for me it changes on book to book too. Like sometimes I'm okay with it at that stage. Other times I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be finished with it. Other times it's hard to let go. Like it just really, and I've got such a terrible memory, I can't even remember basically.
I think it's also because when you're on a bit of a time frame for things and lots of deadlines rolling up, as you have in particular, there's not time to spend holding on to that. Like you got to get it out the door and move on.
And then that's the thing, like ideally everyone would read it properly through at each stage, right? You do your structure edits, then you'd read it through again before you send it off. You do your copy edits, then you'd read it through again before you send it off, and you'd read through the proofread properly, ideally,
Yeah.
right? I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
Would you say that would, but yeah, when you are on like deadlines and that are tight, and you are too, because you've been doing one book a year, but also having a full-time job. So that's like the same as me, 2 books a year. One's my full-time job, one's the other job.
Because I only have one set of characters in mind at any given time. So what I find fascinating about your process is that you have at least a couple of casts of characters.
And that is tricky because so I have spent the last 2 days. So since it's also because I've been, I thought I'd give myself time to recover from, jet lag a bit. But I've spent the last 2 days rereading the 22,000 words that I did prior to my edits of the book. So I wrote 22,000 words of The Bad Bridesmaid. Then I got my structural edits, for Outback Reunion. So I had to stop The Bad Bridesmaid, and it is not ideal. And then I had a holiday. So I'm in that stage now. I was thinking today, I need my Sophie therapy. I'm like thinking, why am I feeling like this? Because it's fear. I'm in that stage now where I need to just get back into it. And it's hard just to take that leap to start again, if that makes sense. So I've done I'm like written notes down. I've gone through it, what I've done. I'm trying, I really just need to dive into it. And I'm thinking, I'm scared that the next chapter is going to be crap though. I'm scared that.
Well, here's your therapy, Rach.
Yeah.
You do know what you're doing. I'm here to
Thank you.
reassure you. You know what you're doing.
So I have to just start. I know. So tomorrow I'm like, you will write 1,000 words, because I gave myself a small goal this week, you will write 1,000 words. And I'm trying to tell myself what we've told other people, like Amanda, when we talked a couple of weeks ago, just write it, because it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have, you can, what you write down doesn't have to stay, but I just need to get back into it. So I think, that's the hard thing, juggling a couple of books a year, is that I think there's no way you're not going to have that, where you have to dive in and out of one book and into another. Yeah. And that does make things a little bit tricky sometimes.
Yeah, it's quite a juggling act, or a high wire act even, I think, what you're doing. And I think it's completely understandable when you have a bit of a break from it. It's like having a break when it goes off for the edit and comes back. Yeah. And just to reassure you, I feel that too when I get those edits back, and I just think there's a moment, well, there are quite a few moments where I think, I can feel it, like it's this resistance of, I don't know that I want to go back into this. Then I think, well, I've got to do it. It's
no one else is going to do it, and if I want the book on the shelf, it's going to happen.
But I think it's normal, and it's also because we know that stepping back into, and maybe this is what it is, stepping back into the story is a big physical and emotional commitment, and so you're just, that's
dancing around it.
No, I just realised, Rach, that I didn't actually say that this is episode 9 of Dear Rach and Soph, and we have some special guests. And
we just started talking, didn't we?
We started talking, and so, in fact, I'm going to let these guests in. So I'm going to push pause on our recording, and then by the magic of the interwebs, well, not the magic of Zoom, because we won't be online doing this, people will rejoin us when our guests are. So
excellent.
Here we go. On So, Rach, I am delighted to announce that our very special guests for this episode are Natasha Lester and Jack Heath. Natasha has worked as a marketing executive for L'Oreal, managing the Maybelline brand before returning to university to study creative writing. She completed a Master of Creative Arts and has written several novels, including The Paris Seamstress, The French Photographer, The Paris Secret, and The Riviera House. Her latest novel is The Disappearance of Astrid Ricard, and she is a New York Times bestselling author. And another best-selling author is Jack Heath, who is the #1 best-selling author of an incredible 40 novels published in 10 languages. His first crime thriller, Hangman, was voted one of the 100 best books of all time twice. His mission is to create books that inspire a love of reading in children and adults. His latest novels are Kill Your Husbands and If You Tell Anyone, You're Next. So I think we are in excellent company to discuss something that you suggested to me as a subject. So I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Yeah, I'd love to pick these wonderful authors' brains about their thoughts on social media, because I think I can say that all of us have done reasonably okay in terms of our social media platforms. I have respected Natasha for years in her wonderfully curated, I should say, and building a brand across Facebook and Instagram. And, I think you've you've given writing advice, you've done, you know, your fashion sort of stuff, you know, that it's been a really great thing that you've put a lot of effort in, I'd say. And Jack, last year, I particularly was in awe of your TikTok presence and some of the what's the word, the videos you were doing. I know the funniest one went viral was when you said you weren't going to do any, what was that? Can you tell me what that video was where you said you weren't going to do a, you know what I'm thinking about?
I'm so really sorry. I don't actually know what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm trying to think
social media scrambled my brain so much that I don't even remember what I posted
so Jack did one went viral, I remember, where you said, I am too exhausted or something like to actually come up with a video. I know you're not supposed to do this, but basically just buy my book because I want to. And that one I remember just sort of went off. But I think you put a lot of effort into your socials, particularly last year. I know for myself, I've done, you know, I've put a lot of effort into it over the years, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Last year, I decided I had 2 releases, Talk to the Heart in November, and then The Other Bridget in February. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go hard on TikTok in that time and see if it makes any difference or whatever. And I think, Jack, you did the same thing because you wrote a newsletter saying that you had actually made that decision. So I was wondering if you could just recap a little bit about what you said in your newsletter about the sort of the strategic decisions you made for social media last year, kind of thing.
And actually, before you did that, I just realized I didn't properly say hello. So hello, Jack, and hello, Natasha. Sorry about that. I just went straight from bios to like, just Rachel, you talk.
That's okay. We're writers. We just skip the politeness and move straight into the good stuff.
But now,
Absolutely.
Jack, why don't you answer Rachel's questions?
We don't do small talk. Yeah, okay, cool. So again, it depends a little bit on which newsletter you're referring to, but I remember that I'd heard a lot about TikTok and how it was important, and book talk was a thing, and I would go into bookshops and there were you know, shelves saying book talk loves this and book talk loves that. So it seemed like something that was important enough that I couldn't ignore it. But I was also aware that social media in general is a huge time suck, and that's a feature, not a bug. That's in fact what it's for. You know, you're trying to well, I mean, the people who are paying the money, the advertisers, and I say that as someone who has often been one of those paying advertisers on social media. Like, your goal is to get as many eyeballs as possible for as long as possible, just sort of keep people engaged on the platform. So I knew that social media would kind of take over my whole life if I let it. So I was determined to put down some pretty hard lines and try to be strategic in what I was actually doing, like making sure that I was not just kind of posting about my book constantly in a way that never gets any traction, just kind of looking for other people who are having the sorts of conversations that I would like to be mentioned in, and then to try to join those conversations in a constructive way, which was all pretty, you know, time consuming. And my ambition to set hard limits on myself kind of fell apart at around about the time the debate leading up to the Voice to Parliament was kind of heating up, because I posted a video about it that went a little bit viral, and not in a good way. Like, I was then kind of buried alive under hateful messages for the next several months.
You got lots of trolling, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. And the weird thing that, I'm sorry, Natasha, I feel like I'm already hogging the discussion.
No, go for it.
Let me just get this out of my system. There were a couple of things that that kind of made me aware of. One was that suddenly it was like the more people hated me on the platform, the more popular I was on the platform. There's that really sort of jarring thing where you can actually the way to succeed on social media is to sort of be just a punching bag, which I didn't I didn't like that at all. But the other thing was that, given the sort of hateful messages that I was receiving, and they weren't all hateful, to be clear, there were messages of support, there were messages that were the opposite of support, and then there were some people who were like, I don't agree with you, but you know, let's be nice to each other. There was all that stuff. But the really addictive part of it was being hated on by people that that seemed to me utterly monstrous. There was this kind of enemy's enemy is my friend thing where I'm like, well, these are clearly bad people and they hate me, so I must be great. Like, it was sort of boosting my self-esteem to be hated on by such transparently bad people.
I wonder if that's a crime author thing. You're like, these were like research for you, you know, these people were giving you the type of characters that you could write about.
Yeah, I don't know, but I do know that it made it pretty much impossible for me to do my writing, because even when I wasn't on the platform, I was thinking about the platform. I was thinking about all those messages kind of bubbling away in the background that were presumably turning up in my inbox, and comments I was being tagged in, all this stuff. I just had this constant feeling of like having left the stove on, you know, that feeling. So in the end, it was simpler to just kind of ditch it. But once my book had come out, I was like, okay, there's I did what I set out to do. I promoted the book. The book's out now. I really miss the brain that I used to have. I miss being able to focus on the thing that I actually care about. So I just kind of up and quit semi successfully.
I would love to know, because you've still been posting, you know, occasionally on Insta and Facebook and.
Oh, it's more than occasionally. You don't have to be nice. I've pretty much failed at my goal to quit it entirely. I'm barely keeping a lid on this low-key behavioral addiction.
Okay, well, you made that goal. What? How long ago did you make that decision? I'm just curious.
The decision to quit.
Mm.
It was around about last December. I realized that I didn't have a book for adults coming out in 2024. It was only books for children, and children aren't supposed to be on social media anyway, although I'm aware that Meta is currently facing a class action lawsuit over exactly this. But I figured, well, if I'm promoting children's books on social media, the best I can hope for is that there'll be a couple of teacher librarians at the few schools that still have those who will see my content. This might be a really nice opportunity for a reset and refresh and just to kind of step back. And I have so far squandered that opportunity, but I'm feeling good about the next 8 to 10 months.
I said maybe because I've taken a step back too. Before we get to Natasha, I'll just say, and that's what I was going to ask the timing, because Natasha, yours is very new. You have announced that you are taking a hiatus from social, so we'll get there in a second, but it's quite new. So I'm interested to see how you feel that's going. I am in between you guys in terms of I decided that I too, for various reasons, it was a bit like you. It was such a time suck. I was feeling that I better think of something to post. You know, I don't want to promo all the time. So I've got to share a bit of me. I've got to, you know, all that sort of stuff. I've got to answer comments, you know, like comments even. That's even time consuming, answering messages that come into this thing. And it was like, it was just becoming a full-time job. And we all did this because we wanted to write books, right? And that's the main thing. So I decided that the scrolling thing was getting to me, basically having it on my phone. I have still got a book out this year, another one, and I've just had a book out recently. So I thought I'd take a bit of a step back, but I couldn't completely. So I deleted it from my phone, all the apps, and I've found that's been really useful. I put them on again while I went on holiday the last couple of weeks. So I've sort of taken a step between in that I'm still on there, but I'm not allowing myself to scroll and really, which is bad, because I think one of the things I feel guilty about is we're a supportive authors supporting each other, right? And if you're not on social media, I feel guilty, but it's also like, well, then if I don't support Natasha or Jack, you know, then of course they're not gonna, you know, they won't support me. And I don't know if that's, you know, necessarily the case, but there's that thing, oh, you should be on there for promo, but you should also be on there for community. But yeah, so I'm still a little bit on there, but have taken a bit of a step back, and it's been really useful not having that constant scrolling. Like, it's not the first thing I do. You know, when I get up in the morning, it used to be, or not even get up, I'd be in my bed, check my phone, it goes off. I check my emails, you know, check my Insta, Facebook, and all that sort of stuff. Now I don't do that. And I just check in once or twice a day. So that's what I've decided, because I felt like it was, taking the creativity a bit like you, Jack, in that I just felt it was detracting from the work, and it's also like seeing what everyone else is doing, and I'm, you know, and just thinking, oh, I should be doing that, I should be writing 10,000 words a day, or that person's, you know. So there was a number of reasons why I've decided to do it. But the other one, well, I'll get to that in a minute. But Natasha, if you want to say sort of your stance recently, I read your newsletter, which your Substack, about deciding to take a break from social media, and then we talked about it at an event we were both at. So do you want to share with everyone else kind of the ideas that you had in that Substack and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So when I initially started Substack, which is actually really hard to say, about a year ago, it was mainly because I wonder whether people actively think about social media in terms of what we're actually doing, which is that we are essentially free content writers for Meta, because Meta exists for advertisers. It gets paid by advertisers. So therefore it needs to provide some content for people to look at in order that those advertisers can attract their target market, right? And the people who provide the content are all of us. And we don't get paid for that content, but Meta is this ethically questionable company that's making money hand over fist. And here we are giving our labor to it without really considering what does that mean long term. I don't know whether anyone read that article in The Atlantic a couple of weeks ago about the harm. It had a very clickbaity headline, like, you would never give your kids a gun, but essentially giving them with Instagram on it is the same thing in terms of the mental health consequences of that. And here we are providing the content in order to create mental health problems in our children. And I'm like, the whole idea of it, actually, when you think about it, is quite distressing. And so I started Substack because I wanted to try to provide meaningful content to people who wanted to read it that wasn't kind of going into lining Meta's pockets. But then the more I wrote on Substack and the more I thought about the whole social media thing, there were so many other kind of tangents that went into that. Like, for example, we're all writers and we write a book because what we want to say is in that book. That is whatever was in our heart or our head, whatever concerns we had, whatever we were working through, whatever we felt would move, entertain, inspire people, is in the 100,000 words that we've put in between those two covers. But then we feel like we then have to say more stuff about the thing that we said, because that's what social media is all about. And it's like, no, that's what I wanted to say, not all this other stuff that goes along with it. And when I looked at these, long posts I was writing on Instagram about these amazing women from history who appeared in my books, and it's like, they take a lot of time to write and to craft, and they're like kind of essays. And I was like, why am I just giving that to Meta? It doesn't make any sense at all. But then the other thing that I talked about in my newsletter as well was this idea. I'm really worried that by being on social media in the way that I am, I'm kind of perpetuating the lie almost that author platform is something all authors should have because it helps to sell books. And I cannot hand on heart say that that's a truth. I think it's not, actually. I think I wrote in that Substack that if everybody who followed me on Instagram bought my book, then I would be number one on the New York Times bestseller list. But obviously that doesn't happen. So these people are there for, obviously people are there for other reasons than to buy your book. And I totally understand that. But it's, when everybody says, oh, you've got to have the platform because it sells books, but then you look at, okay, well, the platform is here. And if they all followed through and bought, this would happen. It doesn't happen. So it is kind of a bit of a lie. I think
I agree.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when I went to a social media talk last year at a conference in Hawaii, feel sorry for me. And one of the people said there, I can't remember where the statistic came from. It was either 7 or 6%. She was someone who was, I think she knew what she was talking about. Is that 7? Let's say it's 7. It's around that number. It's between 6 and 10% of people on your platform.
You're going full Joe Rogan, Rachel.
But let's say 7%, but it's very low. 7% of people on your platform will buy your book. Now, I did the maths on that. So I have, I think, 15,000 on Instagram. It was something like, on Facebook, it was something like 750 people. I have, 8,000 or something on Insta, and that was something like 250 to 300 people or something, and the amount of effort you put into that. And this makes us sound money hungry, right? That we're only there
Yeah,
for
it
the
does.
sales.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's about, is it? Like,
No, I mean, I really think that being on social media is an act of generosity. You're there to provide people who want to follow you with extra information about the thing you're doing in terms of writing. And that's what it is. But to package it up as being a platform that will then help you sell books is, I think, the wrong way to look at it. And I do think that at some point, publishers have to sit down and look at the mental health consequences on their authors of this sort of subtle push for them to be on social media, because I don't think it's good for any of us. But so many authors feel that pressure to be on there. And I was astounded when I pressed send on that Substack newsletter, how many authors sent me private emails. No one ever wants to comment publicly on this. It's all the private emails that come in saying, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm feeling, this pressure to be on there, and I've withdrawn from it because it's caused me mental health issues. And it's this massive thing that's bubbling away under the surface. And I wish there was more we could kind of do about it. But it's, you know,
we all take a collective
it is what it
stance
is, because it's so hard to get publicity for your book. And so it appears that this is a way that you can help to generate that, but maybe, I don't know whether it works out in the end that way.
Yeah. Sophie, have you got anything to add about social media?
Well, see, I don't have huge followings. I'm not a scroller that much, actually, because I realized that I could either be a manufacturer of stuff or a consumer of stuff, but I didn't have time to do both. So I decided to make some content rather than consuming too much other content. That's on the author side of things. Now, I have a music life. I am a country music journalist. I have a whole enterprise in Australian country music. I've been doing it for years, and I am very active on social media there because music is actually working differently to books. So books, we still have the artifact of the book, which goes out into the world, and people can buy it and they can see our photo in it and they can read our bio and they have something to hold that is part of us. Music does not have that anymore, really. CDs have gone the way of the dodo for the most part. Country music still has some CDs being made because people love to have a memento of a performance. They want something to get signed, but there's other merch going on. So for musicians, social media is essential. This is the way they're reaching their audience. They are all quite aware that they have to come to grips with it, even if they don't want to. So the ones who are doing really well as emerging artists are the ones who figured out TikTok pretty easily, or even if they're established artists, they're working out how to use that platform. There is the possibility that their songs will be picked up on TikTok or on other social media and used for other people's content. But so music is working that way. And I do think from the artists I've interviewed, there's been quite a lot of them, they would just see it as an absolutely essential part of what they are doing. They just simply cannot reach audience without it. A lot of them are not getting on radio because radio is run a particular way. There are tastemakers, not even tastemakers, so that's a subjective assessment, but there are people deciding what gets onto radio. That's not necessarily representative of what people want to listen to, but they're deciding that. So for the artists, especially since a lot of them are independent artists within country music, most of them are independent artists. They're not relying on record companies to do any promo for them. And that's another difference between musicians and us, is that we're published by publishers for the most part. Now, there are, of course, authors who are independently published, or they're on KDP, whatever it is, and they're sole operators, but the four of us here have publishers, and we have people doing things for us in terms of editorial design, and that's a separate function as well. So I can see how social media is working differently depending on what sort of creative practice you have, I guess.
It might not be quite as different as you think, though. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but it's definitely the case that if you're not going to promote your books on social media, then these days, as with the musicians, where the hell else do you do it? I mean, the fact is that the audience, and by the audience I just mean sort of humanity in the Western world is kind of spending 2 to 3 hours a day scrolling, right? Every time they're on the bus, on the toilet, wherever, like every spare moment of their attention is captured, so much so that, I mean, if a publisher decided that, oh man, I really, really want to, I believe in Jack Heath's book so much, I'm going to put it on a billboard and, then spend $10,000 putting it up on a billboard, no one would see it because everyone's just looking down at their phones. So the fact is that we're kind of damned if we do and damned if we don't, right?
Yeah.
Like, because if you spend your time if you try to promote your book on social media, then it damages your mental health, it frazzles your attention, you are lining Mark Zuckerberg's pockets while also contributing to the problem that no one even reads anymore because our attention span is being frazzled away by this thing that we all carry around with us. But if we're not there, then how is anyone going to hear about us? So I guess I'm sorry, you guys have invited me on your podcast. I don't mean to be such a downer, but I think we're all doomed.
It's realistic though, Jack. Because our outlets for publicity are shrinking. We all know, not that those of us who are commercial fiction writers end up in book pages anyway most of the time. Although I do think the other Bridget was mentioned with some other books quite recently, Rachael. What was that? Sorry. Or Rachael, you're on mute. I don't know how that happened.
I'm on mute. I was just going to say, I think all of us have possibly been in we maybe have one, like story of being, I know Natasha, you've been reviewed in an esteemed paper, but it wasn't necessarily. Anyway, we're not going to talk about reviews here, are we?
No, we're not. It's not about. But the outlets are shrinking, and so yes, absolutely. To your point, it is an avenue, but I guess maybe this is about us deciding how we want to promote our work on social media and just holding that line. It's like, I'm going to use it for my ends. And Natasha's absolutely right. We are creating content for Meta. But if we can use it to connect to our audience, knowing that it's just for some of the audience and some of the rest of the audience is in a different place and they may never see social media, but they still want our books. I mean, Natasha, part of what interests me about you as a writer is because your books are so well researched, and you then work that research into the writing, not at all in a leaden way. So that means you have to absorb that research so that you can actually write from a point of not trying to just document everything, but write it as a story. That takes a lot of time. I mean, I'm just making stuff up. I don't have to do it much research. I'm just sitting there going, la, la, la. Oh, that's a nice tale. Yes, let's do that. Whereas you're actually going and finding out all this information, visiting places. So that's even more time.
Saying that, though, it also gives her stuff for social media.
Well,
because, so there's a whole, like when you go traveling for research or you've got interesting things to share, then it's easier to do an author talk. It's easier to post, various things. So there's no highs and lows. But when I was on mute before, I was to say, Jack, and you're like, oh, don't be a downer. This is exactly the conversation we want to have. The good things about social media, the bad things. How do we feel? It's just it's not a debate necessarily. But I think, Sophie, you said something which made me think that maybe what we need to do is we need to be controlling social media rather than social media controlling us. And it's about kind of getting that. And Jack asked, well, what can we do if we don't, because that is really the only thing we can do ourselves, we feel like. But I think the thing we can do is try and write a really good book that people, like, word of mouth is still way better than authors on social media. And all the authors who do well because they're like on TikTok or whatever, the majority of them have done well because the readers are spruiking their books. The readers are loving them. Jackie Ashenden recently wrote a Substack too about craft is the new black. For the last few years, it seems like all the focus of author talks, like writing talks, conferences, workshops, articles, it's all about marketing. It's all about social media and what you do to market your book. And everyone seems to have forgotten that what you can do to market your book is to write the best one that you possibly can.
Absolutely.
And the craft is more important. And I think that's one of the reasons why I decided to step back from social media, because just the head noise was stopping me really be my best creative self, and all that sort of stuff. So,
and I think also the talk about social media kind of makes people overlook what I think is actually one of the most influential things that actually helps you sell your book, and which is completely almost out of the author's hands, but that's the distribution and the bookshops. Because
true.
I think, you know, for me, my biggest selling book of all time was because it got pennies pick at Costco in the US in 2018. And that's one of those Reese Witherspoon type of picks, that GMA or Good Morning America book club picks. It's those kinds of badges that get put on books that are the things that shift the hundreds of thousands of copies. It's not me actually putting up a post on social media that is never going to have that kind of impact. Yet we kind of talk about social media as if it's on the same level sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really not. Like, I think that it's books, you know, getting the Indie Next book pick in the US, having independent booksellers be out there, you know, telling people that this book is a great book and you must read it. And that comes from them reading it and loving it. So the craft is really important. So it's all of those things that I think actually are what shifts books much more so than us trying to get people to buy it.
And I think that's depressing in a way. Maybe that's what we touched on when we had a conversation before.
Yeah, that's right.
One thing is, we can actually do social media, right? Whether we hate it or whether we love it or whether we, you know, we can get on there and we can try and do a video, we can try and build a community and stuff. So in some ways that's in our control. So that feels like we're actually doing something to help build our career and sell books and stuff. But as you said, that's really a myth.
Yeah, I think that that's part of it. The whole social media thing, it makes us feel like we have some control over the marketing and publicity of our books, but we don't really.
So Jack, you're not depressing everyone. Natasha's depressing everyone.
Well, actually, and Natasha, I have a question about Substack, because I was reading something recently that was saying, you know, basically get off other social platforms. Substack is where it's at. So I'm interested in your decision to start writing on Substack.
Yes, me too.
Look, I do feel like over the last maybe 3 or 4 months, everybody is migrating onto Substack. So maybe it'll become another Facebook, Instagram wasteland in a year or so. I hope it won't. I really enjoy it because I've always, you know, I started off blogging, you know, back in the day when you had a blog, and I loved blogging. And that's where a lot of my Facebook and Instagram followers actually came from. In fact, they were following me on my blog. And so this feels like a return to that. And I am, you know, doing what I do, which is writing words. I don't, you know, I'm not a photographer. I'm not a, you know,
me either.
You know, that sort of stuff is not my skill base, but writing is, so I can explore things that I can't necessarily talk about in my books or on my social media posts in Substack. But also, and I don't know whether you guys feel like this as well, but people comment on Substack in a deep and meaningful, rich way. And I have interesting conversations with people in the comments, and I never feel scared to write something on Substack. Whereas on social media, I always feel like, oh God, what if somebody twists that sentence? I'm scared of putting anything in print on social media, because I feel like at any moment it could come back and bite me in the bum. And I hate that sense of fear.
Well, that's deeply unsettling to live with that fear. Like, that's a stress.
Yeah.
What's the protection with Substack? Like, why do you feel that no one's going to take your words there? I'm just curious. Maybe it's just, you know,
I don't know. Maybe because it's smaller, and so the trolls that Jack found on Instagram haven't found their way onto Substack yet. I don't know whether it is by its very nature that you have to provide an email address. I mean, although you do on Facebook too. I don't know. I feel like there's a set up process to get onto Substack that maybe filters out some of the people who are just there to stir things up and troll and cause mischief. Or I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Jack, have you been on have you ventured onto Substack yet?
No, I'm resisting that, as I hate the thought of it, which is not me throwing shade on the people who do it, obviously. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where I want all my writing energy to be put into my books. I don't want to spend any of it doing anything else. Like, I've even only recently kind of tried journaling, because even journaling, like for my own mental health and stuff, I was like, but I'm not even going to be able to publish this. Like, this is just a waste of words. So
I feel the same. And I think it's because I'm too lazy. See, I look at Natasha's Substack and I think, wow, that's really interesting. And other people who I've listened to and stuff are read. But I'm like, I don't want to have to write another essay every week or whatever, like, or an essay every week. It's hard enough
exactly.
getting my words for my actual book.
Yeah, that's right. That
but
wouldn't
I guess
work for
that
me at all.
everyone, you know, has different. You obviously enjoy that, Natasha, and maybe it gives you an outlet that kind of even sort of supports your creativity.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, my Instagram and Facebook posts were always long anyway, because they were, you know, talking about, as I say, this wonderful woman from history or this amazing piece of fashion history. So I was never very good at short. So Substack probably suits my verbosity. I don't know.
I have found though that there's a risk to doing things that like book promotional things because you enjoy them, because sometimes, so my thing is that I go on vistaprint.com and start like ordering t-shirts with my book covers on them.
Yeah,
and I've realized that, like, how many books does that, you know, sell? Probably none. Oh, yep, there we go. But the thing is that it feels like I'm doing something to support my book, but it is significantly easier than actually writing a book. So it's just one of those things that I find myself doing whenever the writing isn't going well. And I worry that my Substack would become the same thing. I mean, I have an email newsletter and it's a bit like that. Like, writing an email newsletter for me is easier than writing a book. And so I probably do it more often than I should.
So your canary in the coal mine is Vistaprint. It's like, if you find yourself going to Vistaprint, it's like, okay.
I'm curious. So this is a little
right.
bit of a tangent, and I'll because Sophie has talked before about Gretchen Rubin's what's it called?
Four tendencies.
Oh, yeah.
Do either of you to know about that, and do you know what you are?
Yep.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Enlighten
Don't
me.
worry.
I'll do a brief recap. So Gretchen Rubin is an American writer. She wrote a book a few years ago called Better Than Before about habits. And in that book, she mentions a framework she came up with called the Four Tendencies. And then she actually wrote a book called the Four Tendencies. So this is entirely to do with expectations others place on you, expectations you place on yourself. The Four Tendencies are upholder, who will uphold expectations from others and expectations.
So you two are both. Sophie and Natasha are both upholders.
I'm an upholder. So yeah, so upholders will uphold our own expectations and those from externally applied. Obligers are great with the externally applied expectations. They are the yes people, but they're not great at the internally applied expectations. So they're the people who will say, I'm going to the gym. I promise I'm going to the gym. And they'll say it for 10 years. And then they'll be very upset that they never got to the gym and they won't be able to work out why they haven't started that. Questioners want information for everything. So in a workplace, I always think you've got to know you're managing a questioner or working with one, because you might say, we need to get that project done by Friday, and they'll say, why? And it can sound like insubordination, but actually they just need the information. So if you said, we need the project done by Friday because we have to hand it in to someone else on Monday, that would have satisfied them. And they're the same with any expectations that they apply to themselves. And then rebels will just do whatever they want at whatever time they want. You cannot rein them in. Don't give them a deadline. They don't care.
The reason I asked is because I wonder if this applies to social media a little bit. So after Sophie told me this the first time, and I had heard before, but I went and did the quiz. So Jack, you can go online and it's a 5-minute quiz, maybe even less. So if you need to procrastinate.
I don't need to. I'm an obliger and I'm married to a rebel.
Okay, so you've worked it out. So
therefore also obligers get obliger rebellion, Jack. So that's when they get sick of saying yes, and then they have a almighty meltdown, and then they feel guilty about having a meltdown, and then they'll start obliging again, and then the cycle continues.
God, it's like you have cameras in my house and you've seen the arguments I've had with my wife.
Sophie's becoming my weekly therapist, so you're welcome to just join us. But the reason I was thinking, like you said, Sophie, you're not a scroller kind of thing. You just go on there and you do your thing, and I feel like that kind of pays into that.
Yeah, we're the just do it tendency. It's like
I did the quiz, and this is funny because I think it's wrong what I got. Because I got questioner, but I actually think I'm more of an obliger, or maybe even a rebel.
Except you can have, so if in Gretchen's book, no, not in Better Than Before, but in the book about Four Tendencies, she does have like the subset one. So you can be questioner with a subset of obliger. or a,
Yeah.
so yeah, she can run it
Well,
like
I
that.
am leading into this in terms of social media. So the reason I think maybe I'm an obliger or a rebel, obliger is because I mentioned before, part of me thinks I want to be on there because, yeah, I guess we're told, you know, you should be.
Mm.
But I also I'm a yes person in that this is my year of no this year, because I have realized that I was saying yes to every cover quote, yes to, you know, every library event, yes to charity stuff, yes to whatever. And that, as well as social media, was taking over my life. So that's why I think maybe I'm a obliger. And I was thinking about social media. I want to be on there I'm like, oh, well, I better support other people, because if I don't like that post, you know, like and so that's my thinking. But then part of me thinks I'm a rebel, because you know how you're always told with social media, I've had so many social media experts that the publisher has, you know, given to me to do a training or whatever, or I've been to a conference or a workshop and you've done social media something, right? And they're always saying the thing you must do is schedule it, right?
Oh,
Because
God.
if you do a schedule, do a calendar of your social media. So on Monday you post a puppy picture, on Tuesday you ask everyone what they're reading, and Wednesday you, I don't know, talk about
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? That's what they say you should do, right? And I'd never liked that, because it feels too structured to me, and it feels like then it's very manufactured and that people are going to cotton on kind of to what you're doing. But the main reason I don't like it is because I'm much more of a spur of the moment type of person, and I'm like, I might be writing and suddenly think, oh, I want to put that on social media, or then suddenly plan, you know, 3 weeks ahead. I mean, I will schedule something occasionally if I've got something coming up that I, you know, want to put on at a certain time or things like that. But my social media has always been much more organic than I've been told it should be. And I wonder if that's because I'm a rebel. But yeah,
No,
like,
I don't look, Rach, I don't think you can be a rebel because you keep deadlines. That's the like
okay.
the tell that you're
Oh,
not.
I'm not sure I do all the time.
Well, look, the pace at which your books have been emerging suggests that you're at least partway good at keeping deadlines.
I
So
must be an obliger, maybe, I think.
it's well maybe. But interesting what you were saying about yeah, trolls and also Natasha saying about trolls and comments and things. So I know someone who has a massive social profile. She has 900,000 TikTok followers. She's had like 18 million views on
Can you
YouTube.
introduce her to us so we can all get her our books?
She said her superpower is that she does not feel peer pressure. So she would look at a troll comment and go, lol. In fact, in her latest podcast episode, because she has a podcast, she even talks about the fact that you should never respond to trolls, but absolutely leave their comments there, because it bulks up the numbers on your algorithm in terms of people commenting.
But
So
Jack's responses were gold, though. So, you know, I'm glad he did respond.
he was therefore generating more content, and it probably worked algorithmically speaking.
But did it sell books for you? That's the question. Like, that's like, yeah, who knows?
That's
We never know.
unknowable. Like,
And
I
that's
know
the
the book
thing as
was a
well.
hit, but I don't know if it had anything to do with
Exactly.
anything that I did. We
And
haven't
that's-
actually talked yet about like I mean, there's personal safety risks and stuff, obviously,
Yes.
but I'm more interested in kind of the artistic and creative consequences for sharing yourself so freely with the audience. Like, there's the one thing that no one wants to see on social media is inauthenticity, right? Like, everyone wants you to be absolutely your most authentic self. But the thing is that there's no, like, I have never read a book that has been improved by knowing the authentic self of the author, right? Like, you can't enjoy the puppet show if you're watching the puppeteer. Like, if you're reading a book and going like, oh, I can absolutely see why Rachael decided to write this particular sentence this particular way, then you're not enjoying the story. So it feels like it's an entirely wrong-headed way to think about marketing. I'd much prefer to be, you know, Elena Ferrante, or you know, to disappear entirely. That seems like the smarter choice as far as marketing the books goes, or at least making sure that the reader enjoys them.
Yes, that's true. That made me also think, like, when you said disappear entirely, I realized what you're saying with Elena Ferrante or whatever he said. But have you got fear? Like, you decided not, that it didn't matter because you didn't have a book out this year, kind of thing, right? And I've decided to step back for a few months. And I'm probably a bit like you, Jack. I haven't stepped back as much as I intended to, because then Sophie and I started this podcast, and hey, I got to share it on socials,
Yeah.
and people are still tagging me in the book stuff because it's only a month or so after the release, so you sort of feel like that's why I discovered that on my iPad I can share stuff, whereas I can't do it from your laptop, but I check my iPad once or twice a day. But I don't have the tendency to scroll there as much. I might like pick up my phone when I'm out and about, and so I was a little bit, I was trying to choose my time. I'm thinking now, well, I'm going into a sort of a lull until the next book comes out. Natasha, I believe you don't have a book this year, so I guess it's an ideal time for you to kind of take a little bit of a step back. But do we have fears in that? I think we're all in agreement that social media probably doesn't sell books, but are any of us, daring enough to completely delete, not just delete it off our phones like I have, not just take a break, but like completely, would any of us dare completely do that? Because it is that, fear that, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm terrible at speaking.
Would our publishers let us? That's the other question.
That's a good question too.
Yeah.
So yeah, first each of you answer, and then I'll ask Sophie the publisher question. Go, Natasha.
Well, look, I am seriously considering it because when we spoke, Rach, and you said you'd taken the apps off your phone, like literally the next day I went and took them off my phone, and I can probably count on this many fingers in the last 3 weeks the number of times I have looked on my social media. And have I missed it? Absolutely not at all.
I agree.
And I think that the other thing that makes me I think about, particularly in historical fiction, who are all the big authors, and they're not on social media. Like Kate Morton puts up a beautiful photograph of the English countryside every 6 months, and that's all she does. Kristen Hannah.
So if she wasn't there at all, it wouldn't make any difference.
Exactly. Kristen Hannah doesn't do very much. Kristen Harmel, Kate Quinn does a little. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not constantly on social media. And again, when I look back to my biggest selling book, which was in 2018 because of that Costco pick, I had probably 2,000 followers on Instagram, whereas now I have nearly 10,000. And so, but the last book will never sell as many as it did in 2018 because it didn't have the Costco pick. So I can't, there's no relationship for me between my social media numbers and my sales. So I believe that I could easily leave social media, and I don't think it would affect my sales. I mean, maybe I'm very naive, and maybe
I
I'm
don't think you are.
burnt out.
I really don't think you are, because I think the people who have loved your books and stuff, whether they're on social media or not, they'll find you through other ways. You know what I mean? Like, I think your books will still sell and probably wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. Because I'm in a similar situation to you in that, but be frank, on this book, my last book did really, really well. The one that just came out, The Other Bridget. And who knows? Is that a new publisher? Is it the cover? Is it the concept? Is the time of year? Is it that I did go hard on social, like Jackie said with your husbands? What is it? Who knows? Prior to that, I have grown an online book club with my friend Anthea in the last 5 years. We now have 6,000 people almost in there. My sales have not exponentially gone up in that time. I had, probably similar to you, Natasha, when, say, the Patterson Girls came out, which was a really big hit, I probably had half on social media, even less than I had now. And the sales have not exponentially gone up with my social media. So I do completely agree with you in terms of, whether or not it sells books. But I just wonder, it's like, it's also that FOMO, what are we missing out? Because, if I'm not on social media, will I miss Natasha asking everyone to go to her party at the beach house? Will I miss Jack, asking a group of, women's fiction authors to write a crime novel with him? Like, what am I going to miss out on,
Well, and Jack's in an interesting position because, of course, so many of his readers are not legally allowed to have social media accounts or ethically allowed to. So, Jack, I mean, your perspective as a children's author with social media is an interesting one to have, I think, because as you said, you could just, you don't have a book for adults out this year, maybe taking a break.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be brave enough to, go the full way and delete all my accounts and stuff, though. I think the difference is, so again, I'm with you. I don't think it sells books, or at least not not nearly as much as people generally think it does. I also think that it can sometimes tank your career. Like I nearly lost a publishing contract in the US over a video that I'd made that I thought was fairly innocuous, but my agent told me to quickly take it down. And I was like, oh, all this time I was building a platform, or I thought I was building a platform, but actually I was just kind of setting up landmines around myself that I might step on. So that's a factor as well. But I think when you have a book, like the fact is that most books flop, right? Like most books don't earn out their advances.
Quite positive on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
Real talk. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, real talk. If you write a book, it won't get published, and if it does get published, no one will read it, and if they do read it, they won't read the sequel or whatever. So yeah. But the thing is, you want to be able to tell yourself that you did everything you could. I think that's for me what it comes down to. Like if I released a book and it flopped and I had sort of quit all my social media channels, then there would be that kind of, but what if that was the thing that would have made the difference? Whereas if I write a book and then tweet a whole bunch about it and it still flops, I can go, well, I gave it the best possible shot of success. And I think that's, for the record, that's not advice. I don't actually think that's a good way of thinking about things. I think it's just the way that I do think about things. And part of this journey for me has been kind of learning to accept myself as I am, like to accept, for example, that I'm not the sort of person with the discipline to, stay away from stuff that's bad for me, and to learn that I'm an inherently curious sort of person, and that social media like hijacks that curiosity and kind of brings out a narcissistic element in myself and stuff. So we can't change who we are necessarily. It's just a process of trying to work out what you care about, which in my case is sort of writing books, and then trying to work out the best way to sort of manipulate the person that you are into doing the things that you want that person to do.
So for me, sorry, who is it? Natasha, you go.
No, sorry. If I had a stunned look on my face for a little while, then my sound dropped out. So apologies for that. But just to pick up on what Jack just said, I wonder if there's another way of looking at that. And like I have absolutely felt all of those things that you just said at many points in my career. But I don't know if it's because I have been quite burnt out from last year, that if we took that energy out of the social media and put it all into the book that we're writing, then would we feel like we had absolutely done everything we could, because all our attention, focus, creativity, heart, head, everything about us has gone into that book, and we haven't given any of it to social media. So maybe that is actually doing everything we could, rather than splitting ourselves. I mean, and I don't know, I think that's utopic probably, but that's kind of where I'm at the moment, and that's what I'm going to try and do with this next book and see what it does.
And I feel the same. That's how I kind of want to be as well, and I'm finding it hard, as I said, because of the release just being still there. I feel like there's still stuff I have to share, but maybe I don't. But also I'd ask you a quick question, because you've got an online book club too, and that's another thing. I'm like, I've built this community and I kind of owe it to them to keep that going, and that is on Facebook, so I can't completely walk away even if I wanted to, and I'm just wondering how you're managing that, or what you've decided.
Yes, that is going to be a very tricky thing to decide, and to be honest, I haven't been available to that community for the last couple of weeks. I mean, I've had a lot of other stuff happening as well personally. And I'm not a big sharer of my personal life either, which I think is the other reason why I do find social media quite difficult as well. It's not something I love, sharing personal stuff. So I recognize that I've got a big decision to make about my book club going forward. And it may be one that is means pulling out of that community.
Yeah.
You know,
And
that's
I
something.
even think the same as myself. Sorry if anyone's
Yeah.
listening, but you know,
Yeah, I
sometimes
know. Like,
in
Yeah,
the
but
end,
Rach, I
we
mean,
need
Rach,
to
you said
protect.
you can't. You said you can't walk away. You can.
Exactly. That's what
yeah.
I was just saying. In the end, we have to protect the work, right? And that's what I wanted. That's what it's there for. And I think people are more understanding sometimes than we think. Like I've seen you put a thing up on social media. I did a little thing in my newsletter as well, saying I am stepping back a little. And overwhelmingly, people are like, "Thanks. We want you to write books."
Yes, same. Yeah, I know. That's what funnily enough, they want the words in the covers, not the stuff on
Yeah,
social
so if they probably like the social media, they probably,
Yeah.
Enjoy that. But if they have to choose between, Jack, the social media person, or Jack the writer, Natasha, the social media, Natasha the writer, they'll choose the writer because that's where they connected with us in the first place.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I would have hoped was the case, but it's possible that my books aren't as good as you guys' books, or maybe
It's
just
not
that my
true.
readers aren't as connected to them, because I was expecting all these messages about like, no, it's the books that we care about, but mostly it was like, no, we still want you to hang out and be part of our community.
I think you should look on the flip side. The way is that it's not that they don't like your books; it's that you're doing too good a job of being a personable person, and they don't want to with you. Maybe Natasha and I are not that likable, really. But
I do think what Jack's mentioned is an important part of it, which is whether the social media is there for readers to have a means of connecting with us, or actually finding some distraction or reassurance in what we put there. So in that way, it will be an extension of what we do with writing books. And that, if I think I'm writing books in order to provide entertainment or reassurance or relief or whatever it is, if being on Instagram and I put something up and maybe it's just a picture of a flower or whatever, and it's someone likes it, it gives them a bit of a lift, then I've done my job. I see that as an extension of writing my books. Or if it gives them an opportunity to make a comment about a book, or send me a message or whatever that they wouldn't have otherwise had, and that makes them feel better or happier or whatever it is, great. I've done my job.
I'm well aware we've talked a long time and everyone's probably sick of it, and probably Jack needs to go to bed, and you too, Sophie, and but just one other thing you said about the likes and the reader giving a like, something Jack said about the narcissist element, and like I'm like, it's very addictive, especially with TikTok, I think, to go and you post something and then you're like, okay, I'm just going to leave that, but no, you want to see, or hang on, have I gone viral yet, or how many likes have I got, and is there a comment, why is there only 2 likes on that? I thought that was my best video ever, and it just it becomes so much, as you said, Jack. I think you become a type of person that you don't necessarily want to be, and what's the mean like so I think we just really have to, as I said before, decide to control social media rather than us, and whatever that looks like, whether it's stepping off completely, whether it's taking a little bit of a break here and then, or whatever. But really the most important thing is the books, right?
Yeah, I've had some, just to put some context around the addiction of like checking for likes. I have like a Kickstarter campaign at the moment, and so now the likes are actually like dollars. So
that's even worse.
the
often do you
compulsion
check?
to check if your project has suddenly gained millions of dollars of support is like overwhelming all the time. And when you talk about it turning you into someone you don't like, I basically turned into a stockbroker. I'm like constantly looking at this graph on my phone to go like, what can I do to bolster these numbers?
What a world we are in. Yes, I can imagine that would be very addictive. It's a bit like checking your Amazon rankings, hey, and release. Why has it moved?
Oh, I never figured out how those work, and I don't intend
exactly.
to.
That's what I mean. It's futile as well, because I think those, if this is a tangent, but you can move. They don't really show anything. Or Sophie's the publisher; she can tell us, if they actually mean anything.
Well, on Amazon in Australia, not as much as Amazon in the US. Let's put it that way, because it's a major player. But I can honestly say I've never checked an Amazon ranking for one of my books.
You're good. You see, I'm the checker. See, I'm the obliger. I'm checking to see whether is that it. I don't know. Anyway, we've kept you guys going like a long time. So Sophie, do you think that's probably time to wrap up?
Look, I think we can. It's been such an interesting conversation for me, at least, just because I think we're all approaching this in different ways. Natasha has a Substack. Jack is clearly, because he's writing for children and adults, he has a different perspective. Rach, you're so active on social media within your book club alone. So hopefully for people listening to this, they've had a range of a range of input to listen to and think about. I don't know that there is a way to solve it, except apart from fundamentally thinking we need to do what suits us, and yet it comes back to us controlling the medium, not the medium controlling us, or at least us controlling our own work and what we want to put out, and thinking of it in terms of, well, what am I putting into the world? Am I happy with that? If I don't feel happy about it, I'm not going to do it.
If it helps, Naomi Klein and Johann both think we should just nationalize Facebook, so as it like serves the interests of the public rather than the advertisers, and then this whole thing would become redundant.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm gonna have a bit of a Google and look that up. Yeah, I think maybe we should, reconnect in a year and see how we're feeling.
Yes.
Whether you're
bad idea.
Whether you're still, Facebook and Instagram free, Jack, whether you've managed to stop, looking Kickstarter.
I very much doubt it, but I can say that meeting you three is the only good thing that has ever come out of social media for me. So thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
Well, thanks for coming on, and I will do the official end of proceedings there and let Jack and Natasha go. Rach, any last words from you?
I don't think so. Just thank you so much. It was really, I just really wanted to chat about this, something that's been on my mind a lot, and you guys are so eloquent and wise in your conversation about it, so much better than me. So thank you.
Now, Jack, your book out this year will be?
Yes.
My book? Oh, yes. I don't know. Spy Academy Doomsday.
Tell us about the kids' books. I'm sure we've got plenty of mums and dads listening and teachers.
It's called Spy Academy Doomsday. It's got giant bugs in it. Over to you, Natasha. What are you working on?
I love that. Okay, no bugs, but lots of French people. I don't have a book out this year. I'm having a year off, which is lovely. Next year, 2025, I have one coming out called the Mademoiselle Alliance, which I'm looking forward to.
But latest books, Kill Your Husband and The Disappearance of Astra Picard. Have I got those right? So I've read them both. So go out and check them out as well.
Well,
thank
Jack,
you both
Natasha,
so much for having us.
Thank you.
Well, Rach, I thoroughly approve of your choice of subject there, because that was a really interesting conversation. I thought partly because I wasn't in it and I could therefore just sit back. I wasn't in most of it, so I could sit back and listen to it. But hopefully our audience gets a lot out of it, because I certainly did, actually.
Yeah, and email us if you have any more thoughts on the whole social media thing, I guess. Sophie, you want to say the email? Okay.
It is sophie@green-author.com. It will also be in the show notes. Because
I just think I'd love to hear from other authors and readers, maybe on, whether or not how they feel about authors' social media.
Yeah. Whether you want us to be there or not. Do you like seeing us on there, or is it a waste of your time as well? Are you, as a reader, trying to get off social media and wishing that there wasn't much content on to lure you?
Read your book.
Yeah. So we have had Amanda Knight as a guest. We've now had Natasha Lester and Jack Heath. We do have some other guests coming up, which I think will be very interesting for everyone. I'm certainly interested to talk to these people. We won't reveal who they are till they're actually on.
Oh.
But in the meantime,
and we have a couple more reader questions, author questions, I think, coming up as well, haven't we?
We do. We have quite a lot of subjects planned. So you'll be hearing from us for the next few weeks at least. And if you do have a question for us, let us know, or a suggestion for what we could talk about, because we're having fun.
Yeah.
So I will talk to you soon, Rach.
Okay. Have a great night.
Bye.